Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Five Fact Friday, your weekly roundup of UK housing market published facts, or facts that things have been published that may not be facts, they may be opinion, as I'll come on to in this. There's a lot to get through. It's been a really, really busy week. Let me just make sure we've got everything live where it needs to be, because we're streaming on 8 different platforms at the same time. This weekly news is as equally intended for agents as it is for movers. Come on. Why is this not happening? Here it is. Okay. So live on Instagram. There we go. My name is Charlie Landon. You're watching Moving Home with Charlie. You might also be watching on the Best Agent channel for agents. You might be watching on Best Agent's Instagram channel too. But the idea here is for me to present to you the 5, sometimes more, and today it is more, most significant facts that have affected the UK housing market this week. And also apologies for the camera quality and the sound quality in the audio. I'm somewhere unusual and different. There's so much to go through, but at the end of these 5 or 6 facts, I'm also going to show you a clip of the iNewspaper journalist Vicky Spratt talking to Matthew Pennycook, the housing minister. I'll come on to that in a minute. But first of all, let's get started with fact number 1, which is from Rightmove's latest quarterly rental trends tracker. Because it's Rightmove, these are trends based on rental asking prices, as confirmed in the last page of the PDF that you can link to from this page. By the way, all of the things I'm showing you on screen in the 5 facts, or 6 or 7 facts that it is today, are all linked to below the description, a link to a page on my website with all of these links there. Okay, and if you're watching this somewhere where there aren't links below, just go to my website, MHWC, for Moving Home with Charlie.co.uk, and you'll see the most recent blog post. If you're watching on this Friday, will be a link to all of these links. If you're listening to this on podcasts, thank you very much. Welcome. And again, links to all of these, because you can't see what I'm doing on screen. You can go and see them yourself in the link in the show notes below. The headlines here, there's so much to go through. I can't go into too much detail on each one, but the headlines from the report are that rents hit a new record. So Rightmove's regular record rent and record asking prices, records, up. Unhelpful as ever. But the reason I included this week is because they are saying that although rents hit a new record, 6.8% increase versus last year. This is an average quarterly asking rents. London's rent increase is only 3.7% versus last year, so much slower rent rises in London. The number of inquiries each property is receiving from would-be tenants is now 17, which is down from 26 in the same quarter last year. Okay, that's a 30% drop in rental inquiries coming through Rightmove in a year. Not only that, rental supply is 14% up. So although rents are still rising, that the rate of rise has eased massively and the supply is up, the demand is down, which suggests that rents are going to continue to ease as we move forward. And in this page here, you can click on the link, which I've also linked to below, to the whole PDF of all these details, including trends, trackers, yields, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's fact number 1. Fact number 2. Angela Rayner unveils sweeping plans to tackle the scandal of the Tory housing legacy. I agree the Tory housing legacy is a scandal. I completely agree with that. And I have been pleasantly surprised at the level of rhetoric about fixing the housing market. and news coverage and genuine intent and desire to make changes to the housing market, because it's definitely become a major crisis and everyone understands that. So whilst I'm pleasantly surprised at the rhetoric, both the volume and what's being said, and that's better than I expected would happen, I still haven't seen any detail or substance that leads me to believe that it's anything more than just rhetoric at this stage. They've taken the action of publishing the public consultation on changing the planning policy framework. And at the end of this video, I'm going to play a clip where Vicky Spratt from the i-newspaper is interviewing Matthew Pennycook, the housing minister, because it highlights the point that I'm trying to make, right? But for now, it is definitely a worthwhile fact to note that Labour is talking a very ambitious game on house building and solving the housing crisis. Okay, next thing that happened this week comes from the Bank of England. And no, I'm not going to talk about the fact that they cut interest rates for the first time in 4 years from 5.25% down to 5%, because that's actually not going to make any difference. I'm sorry. Now, let me, I want to qualify that, right? If they had cut the base rate by 0.5%, that would definitely have been newsworthy of impact on the housing market, because it would have been more than expected. But because the quarter point rate cut was already priced in, not only by the markets, but also by the mortgage companies who said that they've already priced that into their products, there's no change, there's no consequence of that change in base rates. If they cut them again in 2 months' time, yeah, that will start to get more attention. But a single cut of 0.25% on its own will not move any needles anywhere, in my view, which is why that is not one of the 5 facts this week. What I think is a more important fact, because it's indicative of what's actually happening, is the bank's monthly money and credit survey when they talk about new housing approvals. And it was widely reported that mortgage approvals in June were stable or unchanged. There we are. Net mortgage approvals for house purchases remained broadly stable at 60,000 in June. Well, there was a big decrease in remortgaging, but that's beside the point. I always like to go and look at both the seasonally adjusted figures, which that is, and also the non-seasonally adjusted figures. And so the actual change in mortgage approvals, which you can see on this page here, was down by 3.5%. So there you got it. That was May was 69,000, and in June dropped to 66,600. Okay, so here you got the figures in the table down there. Right, this is the non-seasonally adjusted. In other words, the actual approval numbers from the month. That's not a massive drop. But I also wouldn't call it stable. Now, if you're someone who prefers to take your monthly change in mortgage approvals with a dose of seasonal adjustment, then fine. But the actual data shows that that's happening. And it may well come up next month. That might have been something to do with the election. I'm not reading anything into that. But mortgage approvals are a tangible indicator of the health of the housing market. All right. So slight weakening from May to June in new mortgage approvals, which is not welcome for anybody, because what we all need is more housing transactions to happen. The next fact, Zoopla's boss said this week, and it's reported in the Telegraph, being a private landlord in Britain no longer makes financial sense. There he is, the Zoopla boss, Charlie Bryant, and the article goes through it. Now, I've been saying that for over a year, because one of the things that made the most sense for private buy-to-let landlords was capital appreciation, but there just isn't any anymore in sort of typical rental properties. Very, very little at all. Okay, which is why so many landlords are selling up. And by the way, while we are on that topic, I'm going to just skip to another point, which I had saved up for the end as a bonus point number 7, But I'm going to show it now because it actually is relevant to this point. So also data from Zoopla, they put out a stat saying that 40% of former rental homes put up for sale remain rental homes, either because they're bought by a new landlord or the landlord actually decides not to sell it and keeps renting it. Now, I flip that around to go, hang on a second, so that means that 60% of them are bought by homeowners, if I've got that right. And this is interesting because if 60% of the rental properties being put up for sale are turning into homeowner occupied properties, there'll be people going, oh no, but that's less rental stock, it's going to make rents go up. I think demand for rent is falling faster than Rightmove suggests, which is why landlords are selling up, because they're just not getting the rental returns to justify it. And secondly, every first-time buyer who is able to buy a home because a rented home is being sold is one less tenant demand. All right? That's the basic maths. If a landlord sells their rental property to a homeowner occupier, that tenant has moved from being a tenant into being a homeowner. And the more that do that, the more people who want to own their homes get to own their homes. And it helps to ease the pressure on prices for first-time buyer properties. So I think that's an interesting stat. Definitely an interesting stat that tells us what's actually going on out there. Right, back to the main thing. So Zoopla, this is now fact number, I've lost count of what fact number this is. 4, 5, where are we? Oh, I've got another bonus one actually. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is fact number 5. And it's Zoopla's house price index. And the bit I wanted to talk about here is the fact that property prices are now at 0.1% inflation. I want everyone, and that's what makes the headlines, right? And today, or it wasn't even today, a few days ago, Nationwide put out something saying that house prices actually are up 2%. A company called eServe put out a report saying house prices are down 2% year on year. They're all different. Are they up 2% year on year? Are they down 2% year on year? Are they 0.1% year on year? Nobody really knows, and it's not really helpful. And what is much more helpful, and we should stop with these national average rounded up figures, is to see the difference in price movements between property types. All right. So here we've got 5 rows. The top line is all property, and then they separated it out into detached houses, flats, semis, and terraced houses. Okay. And the year-on-year change for detached houses is down £2,750, or down 0.6% year-on-year. And it's down 1.3 thousand, or 0.7% for flats. But it's up for semis, and it's up for terraced. So the point is, if you look at this column at the end here, year-on-year change, they're saying, oh, house prices are up 0.1% on average. Well, no, they're not. They're either down 0.6 or 7%, or they're up 0.7%. And that would have been a much, much better and more useful headline of this. Detached and flats fall 0.7%, semis and terraced rise 0.7%. That is a much more useful headline. And that's why I've included this in 5 Fact Friday today, okay? Because if you are buying a home, you can't buy more than one of those 4 types, right? So if you're buying one of those 4 types, well, are they unchanged at 0.1%, or are they going up or are they going down? It's different depending on what property type you're buying, okay? So that is why you should always look beyond the national averages, because they're just useless and meaningless, especially when you break them up between countries and then town and north or south. There are so many dimensions to property prices. Country, region, urban, rural, property type, tenure type. I mean, there's 5 or 6 different ways to slice and dice the housing market up. So I can't stress enough that you should just ignore Now, up or down, it makes no difference. Just ignore national house price data because it's never accurate or reflective of your individual move circumstances. Right, onwards. Now, this is from the thumbnail that I published this live stream with, that will get updated in due course. And it's a bit clickbaity. It is true, but it's not yet hit the headlines because it's actually just something that Torsten Bell said, and now he's a Labour MP. And they're just mooting it. And I think it's worth noting. So this is not one of the 5 facts this week, but it is a bonus fact I think it's worth taking into account. Just watching closely. Are they going to change the way council tax is calculated based on 0.5% of a property's value? Now, there are many reactions to this, and it kicked off a huge debate in the comments under the post I put on X. Because what that would do is it means everyone who lives in the southeast would see their council tax go up, and everyone who lives in the north and northwest would see their council tax come down. A property value tax is not the same as a land value tax, which is a very important difference. But I think that it doesn't surprise me if they drip these stories out in a small way to see what reaction there might be. And if you read the reaction, there are pros and there are cons. It does help to level things up. A tax that's related to a property value does help to level things up nationally, no doubt. But it would be incredibly unfair on some people and would also leave councils in the north out of pocket if it was done that way. So a straightforward property value tax, I don't think, is the right thing. Neil Big H asks, am I hearing Charlie warming to Labour? I wish I could say yes, but no. And I'll come on to that in just a second, right? Because council tax is a ridiculous system that was set in the 90s, hasn't been changed, and it doesn't work, and it's unfair. And it means people are being overcharged in smaller properties and undercharged in bigger properties. And it doesn't work for councils, and. Stamp duty is also a unhelpful and regressive idea that stops people moving. And it's, we talk about blaming the boomers for not selling their big empty homes that they're living in, but actually it is the financial rules, the fiscal rules, the tax rules, the inheritance rules, all of these rules that make it nonsensical for boomers to downsize from their large detached homes. Okay, and if the government was to do away with stamp duty altogether and replace it with some form of land value tax, it would massively level the playing field and allow them to sell up, because they'd want to release the value that's currently not being taxed in their homes. So I think it wouldn't surprise you if this was a very clever little, let's just dip our toe in the water and see what the reaction is to a tax like that. Okay, now, for those of you asking about what I think about Labour, this is a clip of Vicky Spratt, who is the iNewspaper journalist who campaigns. She's not a campaigner, she's a journalist, but she writes tirelessly on the housing crisis and the housing market. And last week, or this week, she got to interview in person Matthew Pennycook. Now, I want you to pay attention. She asks him the question, why should anyone who's affected by the housing crisis care about the national planning policy framework? In other words, she's trying to get some specifics out of him about how it's going to help. And listen to the answer, because it sums up for me why I still have no faith. Here we go.
It's fair to say that there is no one in this country that is impacted by the housing crisis in some way.
Yep.
But I imagine lots of them have never heard of the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework. Why should they care about what you're doing this week? What would you say to them?
Well, I would say to them, if you are someone who is stuck in temporary accommodation, if you're on a council house waiting list somewhere across the country, there's now 1.3 million people, as you know, on that list. If you're suffering from, unaffordable rents, substandard accommodation, you want to be able to buy, or you're in the private rented sector and you need that genuinely affordable social home to rent, we've got to, one way or another, build lots more homes of all types of tenures. The only way we're going to do that is by pushing the envelope at a local level, ensuring that every part of the country is playing its part in that 1.5 million new home target, but also on top of that, building more large-scale new communities that can add to that target that we've given local authorities through the NPPF and make a real contribution to housing supply.
So I was really, really hoping to hear an explanation from him saying, as the housing minister, what we're proposing to change in the national policy planning framework, national planning policy framework, will fix the problem like this. This is how we're going to unblock it. But he doesn't. He calls it pushing the envelope. What does he mean by pushing the envelope? And it's yet more soundbitey rhetoric without explaining how it solves the problem of the past governments who've tried to do the same. And for those of you who watched my last couple of videos, and it's absolutely related to this, I put that graph up from the Financial Times, this graph here on the screen, a couple of times in the last video. And actually, I didn't check carefully what this graph was about. And it's an interactive graph, which I'm going to show you now in more detail. And I've also, if I haven't already, I'm just going to put a link to this story directly into the live chat for you, because I don't think it's on my webpage. Let me put this in the live chat. All right, there's a link to this Financial Times article. But if you otherwise, just go and search for it, because it's important if you care about how this is going to work or not. So ministers push for more housing in Northern England and Tory shires. So what this is reporting on is how Labour's house building targets are changing and differ geographically from the Tory ones. So the changes to the National Planning Policy Framework will see house building targets tilted away from Labour backing big cities and towards the rest of the country. And this is something that hasn't really been picked up and in the mainstream media, but the Financial Times has done a very detailed investigation here. One of the things that they've pointed out here, and they talk about reducing the London target, but look at this. So Redcar's target has jumped from 46 homes as a building target per year to 642, a rise of 1,300%. This is what this graph applies to, right? This graph applies to the change in targets. Hang on a second. So the darker red colours on here are where Labour's proposed house building targets have changed. And the darker red, the higher the pressure on on the change of house building targets. And the lighter or the blue is the lower the pressure. So actually, what this graph, if I'm reading it correctly, what this graph tells us is that they are reducing the house building targets that the Tories had in London and increasing them massively in the north and especially in the northwest. So here we are, change from the current method, 530% in Westmoreland, 400% in Cumberland, 200% in Northumberland, 210% in North Yorkshire. But Birmingham they're dropping the house building targets in Birmingham by 50%, if I'm reading this correctly. And this is so this is an interactive graph. I can change this. This is the change from the current method, right? If we go to change from current house building rates, it changes it all again. And this is to do not with house building targets, but actual house building rates. And so what this is saying is that Labour's changes are going to increase house building rates. So in Epping Forest, for example, a 470% increase from current house building rates is what Labour's target is. Same with the New Forest, 400%. But Burnley is 40% down, and Rugby is 40% down, but Bromley is 800% up. Hastings is up. Okay, so it's detailed, and anyone who actually cares about this and wants to know about the detail, I urge you to go and look at that Financial Times article. The link is right there in the live chat. That's not behind a paywall, that article. I'm not signed into to the Financial Times, but yeah, I'm able to read that article. So so there you go. That I think is also worth drawing attention to. All right, ladies and gents, girls and boys. Do we have a few questions? Wow. Unlimited pizza. Exchanged on our sale and purchase this week. So that's 2, selling and buying. Thanks for all the info you put out, Charlie. Helped us get under offer in 4 weeks and exchanged in 9 weeks. Trust the process. Thank you so much for that story. That's amazing news. Congratulations. That's fantastic. And you're right. If you understand the process and talk about the process, not prices, then you can have a much, much better outcome, whether you are an agent or a mover. Yes, these glasses are my backup glasses because I didn't bring the right glasses with me today. So these are the emergency spare glasses I have. Yeah, check. I'm going to call it a day for them for now. Thanks for watching. If you are an agent watching this on the Best Agent channel, make sure please that you've registered for Best Agent Day on September the 4th. The link is also below in the description. Agents only, free all-day conference on how we're going to end overvaluing double transactions, half transaction times, and make moving much better, not only for you, but for your clients as well. Got some fascinating speakers on that day, and I'll be revealing how best agents plan to do that using the Best Agent House Price Index, which is a public house price index where exchange prices are reported by members of the public as well. So please go and check that out. And if you are a buyer or a seller and you're new here, welcome. I love welcoming new followers. If you're a seller watching this and you missed last night's live stream, I recommend you go and watch that and skip the first 20 minutes or so. And then watch where I go through in detail exactly what I'd be discussing with an agent that wanted to sell my house. Got some great feedback from that video last night in the comments. Thank you, guys. If you are a buyer, make sure you've got your mortgage and your conveyance lined up before you offer, because it makes your offer much more attractive and more likely to be accepted. And if you're a seller, make sure your contract ready with all the paperwork done before you bring your house to market if you want to sell it quickly and for a good price. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Any last minute questions on this? No, cool. All right, have a great one. Make